Welcome back to All Abandoned, a rock and metal podcast. I, as always, am your host, Jesse Van Rachnid, and this week got something very special for you. If you might recall, just one episode ago, I did a favorite albums of 2023 episode with my buddy Brendan B-Man. You know him. He was back by popular demand. And so this album, Friendship Commanders, the album was called Mass. It made my top 5, and I was able to get an interview with Friendship Commander's mastermind, Buick Audra. And she was just kind and gracious enough to give me her time. And she was just one of the nicest, coolest people I've ever got the chance to speak to in this capacity. And as you know, if you've been following, this is my first interview at least for this podcast. And so here that is. This is my interview with Buick Audra, Friendship Commanders. Check them out. Okay, I think we're in good shape.
Excellent.
All right, you ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, welcome to All Abandoned, a rock and metal podcast. I am your host, as always, Jesse Van Rachnid. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, Buick Audra, Grammy Award-winning musician, published author. Buick, how you doing?
I'm so great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. This is awesome.
It is.
So, we met last fall after the Friendship Commanders played a set here in Pittsburgh at the Squirrel Hill Sports Bar.
Our first ever Pittsburgh show.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are coming back too, but I'll get to that later. So I introduced myself. And you said your name is Buick, and you said like the car, and I thought that was funny. And, yeah, I really dug you guys, so I picked up, bought your latest record, Mass, released in September, Friendship Commanders. Picked it up off you, and being the broke bitch I am, I couldn't afford to also buy the book. But
that's okay.
But I'll be picking that up this time for sure. So yeah, so you guys will be back to the Pittsburgh Squirrel Hill Sports Bar on April 6th, right?
April 6th.
Okay.
Same venue we were at last time, which is such a cool venue, and you'd never know it. Like, the name is misleading, I feel like. It sounds like you're going in to play a sports bar, but it's actually this really cool venue.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, the sports bar part is kind of like sectioned off, and then the whole stage area to the side, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll buy your book then. And by the way, that book is Mass: Essays on Memory, Language, and the State of Massachusetts.
Yes.
So, so my first question then, what was your thought process on, or how did you decide you wanted to kind of marry music with a longer form of written word, by releasing a memoir alongside the album? Because that's something I see very often.
I know. First, I apologize if my cat Rocky also answers some of these questions. He's wandering around chattering at me. But so it's actually my second time doing prose as companion work to music. I did it a year before Mass was released with a solo album of mine called Conversations with My Other Voice, which is also a 10-track body of music. And I wrote a memoir and essays to accompany it by the same title. And I did that time around because that album was a set of 5 songs I wrote years ago when I was really doing my solo music full time, but never recorded these particular 5 songs. And I wrote 5 songs in response to them from who I am now, hence the title, Conversations with My Other Voice. And so because it ended up being this kind of reflective set of songs, I was like, let me go ahead and write out the long form version of these stories that these songs represent. And it was a kind of a grueling and taxing process, but I enjoyed having the words to offer up with the music. And it seemed like a cool thing for people to consume and for people to learn about who I was beyond the songs. And so when we decided to do Mass, I asked Jerry, my bandmate, I said, do you think this is something that our audience, which is a completely, not entirely different audience, but a largely different audience from my solo stuff, do you think that this would be received in a similarly positive way? And he thought so. And since Mass is also an autobiographical album, I set about to write the book to accompany it. And again, I don't know if I recommend it because it is kind of a lot of work to do them together, but I've been really happy with the response, and it's been a cool way to share the music and have people who are interested be able to dive deeper.
Absolutely. And I noticed last time I checked your Bandcamp, there's only a few copies left. Do you still have? Is that accurate? Do you have more copies to
Yeah.
sell, or?
Yeah, there are like 5 or 6 copies left of this printing, and then we might just do an entirely different run, for the summer touring.
Yeah, gotcha. So yeah, so you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but how do you manage that time between not only writing the music but performing and then also writing the memoir itself? Like, how do you find the time?
Not easily, and I'm not even sure what to tell you. I mean, this time around with writing the book that accompanied Mass, I really had to cram it in because our video we made a bunch of videos to accompany the singles that we rolled out for Mass. It just was kind of a big release for us all around, a lot of labor, and writing the book really was done sort of in the cracks of time in between all of the music obligations. I'm very proud to say I'm not writing a book this year. In 2024, I'm not writing or releasing a book.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no regrets. I mean, I'm really proud that it exists, the prose version. I mean, but yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Sure. So you're saying not 2024, so you must mean 2025 will be the
That's
next
right.
one. Okay, great. Um, so tell me more about this idea of sort of like reshaping or reframing memories with new or evolving language. If I'm stating that idea accurately, that you were kind of trying to capture with the memoir. Is
Sure.
that right?
Yeah, and with the album in general, I mean, so Mass, the album is about my time living in Massachusetts. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, but I was moved to Massachusetts a bunch of times by my caregivers, by the elders that I was raised by, and just had like a very strange sort of back and forth adolescence and childhood. So I ended up there not of my own doing, and became a young adult there, started playing rock music there, went to college there, and then left in my 20s. And honestly, the experiences that I had there were so high impact that I kind of, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I just sort of packed them up and was like, yeah, no, and just put them into a space in my psyche where I was like, I'm not carrying that around, or so I thought, I'm not, I'm physically moving. And so therefore I can sort of turn the page and not really have to deal with the events that occurred in Massachusetts. And it wasn't until the pandemic when a friend of mine from those days died by suicide. He was a guitar player named Mark Orleans. Um, that I really started to, in grieving him, I really started to unpack for pretty much the first time in my adult life the things that had happened when Mark and I knew each other back in the day. And when I started to write music about it, about a year and change after Mark died, it became clear to me that I was writing a body of work about a time and place. I wrote one song about Mark called Fail. And then the other songs that I was writing, what'd you say?
It's one of my favorites on the album. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh,
interrupt,
yeah,
but
thank
yeah,
you.
I love
Yeah,
that song.
thanks.
Yeah.
So Fail was the second song written for the record, and I immediately was like, oh, I'm writing about then, like in general. Not only am I writing about loving Mark and losing him, but I was starting to write about like the whole landscape of that time and place. And I just let myself dive into it. And it was interesting because what came up for me in response to your question about applying new languages, it wasn't that the experiences were weird and intense. It was that they were abusive. I had abusive dynamics with people. Um, and I can say that now. I can apply that language now. Whereas, like when I was 20 years old, it just felt murky and imbalanced in ways that I couldn't articulate at the time. So, being able to be an adult in the story and look back and be like, oh, there was like dominance and undue influence and gaslighting and abuse, and being able to say that to myself, but then also to a larger audience was very empowering.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally get that, and that's amazing that you were able to kind of do that kind of for yourself, but also for others by sharing it
Thanks.
later on. Um, so yeah, to focus more on the music, then, like I find Friendship Commanders to be a unique blend of like stoner slash like, doom and grunge and even like some punk in there, um, which, as you kind of alluded to earlier, it contrasts with your solo work, which from what I've
Yes.
heard is kind of a little more easy listening. So, like, are you pulling from different influences for each project? And obviously, you are musically, but more specifically, like, do you have like different drives and or things that you want to express that you kind of like filter through one project or the other?
I think so, yeah, but it's not as intentional as it may seem. It just sort of happens in my own brain that when I never sit down to write for one project or the other musically. I just let through whatever music I'm hearing at the time, and then I kind of know which side of the aisle it falls on. Friendship Commanders tends to be very riff driven, and I tend to write about things that are personal, but not, they live in a different space of vulnerability than the stuff that I release under my own name, Buick Audra. For instance, I've never once like really, we don't release love songs in Friendship Commanders. That's not like
Right.
the work that I'm writing about over there. I'm writing about cultural spaces and identity and um, yeah, sort of moving through the world with ever changing knowledge. Whereas like my personal stuff tends to be much more, my solo stuff tends to be much more um, about the holes that I see in my own self. My It tends to be vulnerable in a different way, exposing in a different way. And I actually am kind of frightened by my solo stuff. It's harder for me to do. It asks a different thing of me. I feel much more exposed in my
Sure.
solo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, from what I've read, you mentioned Jerry.
Yep.
It seems like you guys have been working together for a while.
Yes.
Um, did you guys like work together at all before Friendship Commanders?
Musically, a little bit, and it was kind of disastrous. I had him play drums on my second solo album, which was called Family Album. He did some of the drumming, and my brother did some of the drumming, and we didn't work together that easily. I produced the album, and Jerry, he's an astonishing musician and a great drummer, no question. But at the time, he didn't take notes from me very well. He just sort of thought he knew best, and I was like, I was so privileged to play with my brother for such a long time when I lived in Boston that when I don't know if you've ever played music with a sibling or a family member, but
Hmm.
there's almost no discussion. Like my brother and I share so many tendencies and ideas that we didn't have to communicate that much with one another. I know that sounds strange, but he just sort of inherently knew what something needed when he was playing on it. And Jerry and I came together much more sort of clunkily and not with that much ease. And Friendship Commanders started as like a side project idea. We were both doing other stuff and we thought, oh, I had a bunch of songs that I was like, these are sort of punk and hardcore songs. We should demo them and see what they sound like. And we liked it and played a couple shows in Nashville where we live. And then it kind of evolved from there, but it was never from the outset supposed to be like a thing or a job or a business or anything.
Okay,
It,
gotcha.
it evolved into that.
Mm, uh-huh. And so, when you guys started writing together then and performing together, did you kind of always like intend it to just be a two piece, or did it just kind of like end up that way?
No, I've always been the writer. We don't really write together. We play everything together, but I'm the writer. And originally, Jerry felt really strongly about us being a trio, which made sense to me too. I had been in trios before, and that's a great dynamic. It's You can tour with a trio, but it still packs a lot of punch if you're doing it correctly. Um, and we had some people play bass with us initially, and it was kind of like a study in disasters. It just didn't go well. Like dynamically, musically, there were some okay times, but we never found somebody that was like the right energetic fit for what we did. but we were still kind of like trying to make it work. And then one time we had a show out of town in South Carolina, and none of the guys that had played with us live before could make it. And I said, like, screw it. Let's just do it. I'll just play through two rigs. Well, you can play set up front and we'll just like throw down. And so that was our first show as a duo. And the dynamic was so much more powerful than it had ever been with three people on stage. It was so much more, it was very high stakes. Being a duo is high stakes. There's no net.
Oh,
And
definitely.
it felt sort of intense for us up there, and we never went back.
Yeah, that's what struck me whenever I saw you guys too. I was just like, holy shit! Like these guys are getting, like a lot of sound for just two people, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I found that very impressive as well. So
Thank you.
yeah, that's awesome.
And now
So
that we tour a lot, being a duo is so much easier logistically. I can't even tell you. Like, even having one more person makes everything infinitely more difficult.
sure. Oh yeah. Um, so what kind of how extensive of touring do you typically do with Friendship Commanders? Like how many dates roughly do you guys typically do at a time?
So before the pandemic, we were doing like, let me think about this. How many dates per year? I think we were doing like more than 75, which for an indie band is a lot, you
It
know?
is a lot. Yeah.
Um, and we did that from like 2017 through 19. We really toured our asses off. And then the pandemic hit. And in April of 2020, we released this EP that we were supposed to tour on all year called Hold On to Yourself. And of course, didn't play one single in-person show for the rest of that year. And then things really changed, like the dynamic really changed. We started only going out for like 2 week runs and having much more sort of concentrated touring. We used to just go out for as much as we could. And I think the pandemic, as devastating as it was for musicians and everyone all over the world, I think it was also instructive in that we were like, we could go out for less time and do better than we had been before. It wasn't just about like doing as much as possible. It was about playing better shows in better cities and trying to actually connect with the people that were asking us to come to them instead of just like hitting everywhere for no reason. So now we're a little bit less, we're more selective about how we tour. But we did 2 months after Mass came out last year, which was a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So you're talking about kind of getting invited to play or whatever in certain cities. So did someone, I guess, from Pittsburgh then reach out to you guys to get you here, or did you
Um,
kind of decide?
so Jerry developed some sort of online dynamic with Chad, who books Squirrel Hill Sports Bar, and we know him through our friends in Howling Giant, who are, other local awesome heavy musicians in Nashville. And I haven't actually been party to that whole dynamic. I mean, I met Chad when we played last time, but I haven't been part of that arrangement.
Gotcha. Well, either way, I'm glad you guys made it to Pittsburgh because
Me too.
we wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't. So that's fantastic.
Seems like a really
Um,
good city.
yeah, it's great, and also, uh, so the last episode I released for the podcast was my buddy and I did our favorite albums of 2023.
Killer.
So you made my top five.
Oh, yeah.
Mass got on there. So
What an
Mass wouldn't have kind of Mass wouldn't have though been on my radar if not for having seen you guys. So
Thank
it's
you.
just kind of cool. Like those little like ripple effects that can happen just from playing in a new place and all the things that can happen. And here we are. So
It's so important to me. I can't state enough. Like, as much as the internet does to bring things to us and expand our horizons or whatever, like I think playing live is still the sauce. It's still the thing that is like the in-person thing that we all need to kind of make it matter.
yeah, definitely. And so yeah, I mean, you definitely made a fan out of me, and
Thank you.
I've going back to the older albums too, and I love Bill a lot as well.
Thank you so
Dave,
much.
I gotta dissect a little bit more yet, but Bill I'm really into, and obviously Mass is great. So
We're still very punk on those records.
yeah, that's what struck me.
Yeah, and we made Bill with Albini in Chicago. Um, and that record stands out in the catalog because it was made to tape, and Jerry and I tracked together.
No kidding. Okay.
It was made at Electrical Audio, where Steve lords over the tape machine and is very connected to that whole system, which was amazing to be a part of and to watch. But it definitely raises the stakes because you're getting takes. You're like you're really tracking.
My cat's in here too, but he's sleeping. He's not making any noise. So
Yay, cats.
yay, cats! I had a feeling you were a cat person. I was gonna be one of my last questions, just as a joke question. I was like, okay, so pets.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad
Lifelong cat person.
we're cat people. Yeah.
I feel like heavy music people are most often cat people. Like
Hmm.
we're not just really dog. Like the dog people are like a different subset. I mean, I like dogs too, but I've never.
Absolutely, but yeah, cats are just so much easier. You can go away for a couple days, just leave them some food, they'll be fine.
I know.
So yeah, so you must have started playing music at a young age, I would assume.
Yeah.
Did you have like any influence or encouragement from like friends or family, or was it something that you kind of just wanted to pursue on your own? And like, did you study music anywhere?
Yeah. So my biological parents are both songwriters, not active anymore, but that's how I exist, is that they were in a band together and I am one of their collaborations. Um, no, I was not raised by both of them, but I knew my father a little bit growing up, and my mother continued on being a singer-songwriter all throughout my childhood, and is an astonishing vocalist and songwriter. And he's a cool songwriter too. He actually leans more sort of country Americana. My mom's kind of a rock musician, so I am the child of two guitar playing songwriters. I wouldn't say that there was a ton of encouragement there as much as there was just a bunch of like showing how that life looked, by modeling it themselves. And that was like, I don't think I ever thought I would do anything else. I just was like assumed that I was up there making model, and I am. And my only sibling is also a musician. As I said, he's a drummer and also a really cool songwriter. So I feel like it was a given that I would play music. And I did briefly study voice in high school. I actually studied classical voice my sophomore year of high school, and it was wild. It was like a real baptism of fire, like learning how to breathe, like into the parts of my body that I didn't, really understand were part of singing, learning how to project, because in opera, that's the name of the game. And I'm now allowed a shit singer. I mean, I just sing with a lot of force. And I don't know. I'm not sure that woman who gave me those vocal lessons would be proud, but that education is in there.
Sure. Yeah. You said a couple things that made me think of this, because you had asked if I had ever played music or written music with a family member, and my cousin, actually, I live with here. We've been the best friends our entire lives. Always, made music or did whatever. But
Sure.
so then he went to school for speech language pathology,
Oh, cool.
and so like he knows, like, because then you were saying about like the using the different parts of your body that you wouldn't ever think to use, and
Yeah.
so like he'll be able to tell you like, oh, you're using like this muscle, and like you're doing this with your tongue, and like you're doing this with your throat and stuff, and he'll just like,
Oh,
because he just understands all that stuff from his
yeah, cool.
education. So it's always really funny to get those little insights. He always likes to
That's
let me know about that stuff. So
Man, I'd love to know more about that. Yeah, exactly. Like that, we're using the education whether we know it or not, I guess, right? But and then of course I also played clarinet for a bunch of years growing up, which serves me not at all. But but that's fine.
that's funny. He also played clarinet in high school. So yeah, no plans to have any clarinet on any future friendship commanders.
I will keep you posted. I will let you know. You'll be first to know. But yeah,
Okay.
so far not yet. But music is music, and I feel like it's just a language that you speak in different dialects throughout your life, and use in different spaces in different ways. But yeah, now I'm a self-taught guitar player. I didn't start playing guitar till I was 20 years old, and
Okay.
I wrote a song that day. I was like, I really wanted to play guitar so I wouldn't have to rely on other people to write music. That was the most important thing to me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, all right. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
I know you're great.
I was going to add a couple just silly ending questions, but we tackled the pet thing. So,
Two cats, love them,
so we got
obsessed
cats.
with
So my final and most pressing question for you: favorite color?
them. Oh my God, why is that tough? I love color. I'm from Miami, and I'm proud of how colorful Miami is. Miami has pink sidewalks in certain neighborhoods. Um, I guess I'm kind of a sucker for the world of purple. That, as blue as mass is, and that was my choice to do all those Sienna type prints for the artwork and everything.
Yeah.
Um, I I really am like lifelong sucker for purple. I think it's got a powerful energy to it, and it's weirdly also tied to metal back decades now, back to Sabbath. I mean, it's been like, it's
Absolutely agree. The logo for my show is black and purple, so in
exactly
white.
it's part,
Yeah.
part of our culture, and I claim that for sure. So I'm gonna stick with purple.
Love to hear it.
What's
Yeah.
your favorite color?
I always said green when I was younger, and I still love green. Don't get me wrong, but I'm with you. Where as I kind of age, it's like I think I'm kind of more about purple now. So
Yeah.
totally
I
with
go
you.
through phases though, and right now, like honestly, this year I'm kind of obsessed with yellow. I'm going through like a yellow thing, but that's seasonal. It'll pass.
Buick Audra, thank you very much for being here with me today.
You're the greatest.
Yeah,
Having me.
yeah, anything you want to plug?
No, man, just thanks for listening to the music. Thanks for sharing about Mass. Hopefully, I'll see you on April 6th at
You absolutely will.
Squirrel Hill Sports Bar. And I'm going to release a solo EP this year, so stay tuned for that. I haven't released solo music since 2022, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. That's fantastic. Alrighty, thanks again for joining me. As Buick mentioned, that is April 6th here in Pittsburgh for any of my local listeners. Squirrel Hill Sports Bar. Please show up, support, buy an album. I'll be buying a book. Buy a book too if you can. And all right, thank you very much. I'll let you go.
Thank you, friend.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Later.
All Abandoned, a rock and metal podcast, a product of Jolly Jelly Media, is proudly recorded in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All Abandoned is written, edited, and produced by Jesse Van Rachnid. The opening theme music was written by Matthew Van Horn and was recorded by Matthew Van Horn, Anthony Capozzi, and Nicholas Petruniak. You can write into the show by email at jollyjellymedia@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.